and welcome to week 5 of my Beachcombing Blanket crochet along. I'm Eleonora, the designer behind Coastal Crochet, and all the details about this blanket can be found over on my blog. The links are in the description below. I've broken the tutorials down into smaller segments, so if you want help with the entire square then do watch the tutorials in order, but if it's a particular round that you need help with then I've listed all the tutorials in order over on my YouTube channel. And also remember to have the written pattern next to you when we work through these tutorials, because they're not designed to replace the written pattern but just to help make sense of them as we go through. So moving on to round 11, and these are going to be our pineapple cluster stitches, which give a really lovely puff effect. They're based on puff stitches. So the key is to do these not too loose, otherwise if we do them too loose we'll have a square which is much bigger than it should be. So I'll show you how to do it. So we join yarn A to any corner chain space. And just like we have so many times throughout our blanket and many rounds, we start with 3 chain, counts as the first treble, US double crochet, and then into the same corner chain space we work 1 treble, US double crochet, 2 chain, and then 2 further treble, US double crochet, and we've created our first corner. And so now, looking at the pattern, we have some instructions in brackets, and everything in the brackets we're going to repeat to the final stitch of the side. So we begin with 1 chain, so make 1 chain, and then it tells us to miss the next stitch, so miss this stitch here, and in the next stitch work 1 pineapple cluster. So if you go to the abbreviations in the pattern where it says pineapple cluster, and then I'll talk you through what we need to do. So it's yarn over hook. Remember we're missing this stitch, so insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. Now pineapple clusters are like puff stitches, and you can pull up these loops very tall to make big puffy stitches, but in this square we don't want to pull up the loop too much because otherwise our puff stitches are going to be a bit too big and the square will come out too large. So don't pull the loop up too far. So we've done that once. So everything in the brackets that you see next to pineapple cluster we do 4 times in total. So yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. That's twice. Yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. That's 3 times. Yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. So everything in the brackets we've now done 4 times, and there should be 9 loops on the hook. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now if you look at the pattern, it tells us to do yarn over hook and pull through the first 8 loops. So basically that's all the loops except for this last one here. So yarn over hook, pull through all the loops except the end one. So the first 8 loops and then stop there. And you'll have 2 loops remaining on the hook. And so yarn over and pull through those remaining 2 loops. And that is 1 pineapple cluster, because the stitches, you've got the puff stitch, but by leaving those last 2 loops and then pulling the yarn through those remaining 2 loops separately, you create more of that pineapple shape. And so that we repeat what we've just done all the way to the end. So back at round 11 we have that work in brackets that we're doing to the final stitch of the side. So go back to the beginning of the brackets, make 1 chain, we're missing the next stitch, so not going into this one, and then 1 pineapple cluster into the next stitch. So yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. Yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. Yarn over hook, insert into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. That's 3 times in total. Now one more time, yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. So we've done everything in the brackets 4 times, yarn over hook and pull through the first 8 loops on the hook, which is basically all of them except that last one. You then get 2 loops remaining on the hook, yarn over hook and pull through those remaining 2 loops. And that's our second pineapple cluster. And we repeat this all the way to the end. So 1 chain, miss the next stitch, 1 pineapple cluster in the next stitch. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Yarn over, pull through all the loops on the hook except that last one. 2 loops remaining, yarn over and pull through 2. And there we go, you can see the puff stitches, and we don't want them to be too big, too large. You can make puff stitches quite tall and very puffy, but we don't want them to be too large, and that's a little bit of a challenge. You can even see here that this one's a little bit smaller than this one. It can be quite tricky sometimes to get these puff stitches consistent, but it's just practice and just really being conscious of not making them too large. So we repeat all the way to the end of the side. So I've repeated that all the way to the end of the side, to the final stitch. So there's 1 more stitch remaining after this, this last pineapple cluster stitch that I did. And if you look at the pattern, it now tells us to do 1 chain, miss that final stitch of the side, so don't crochet into that, and then into the corner chain space we work 2 treble, US double crochet, 2 chain and a further 2 treble, US double crochet. And then I'll show you what the work looks like. There is the first side and these lovely pineapple cluster stitches. And now if you look at the pattern, it says to repeat from start 3 times, ending final repeat at star star. So if you go back to where the star is, it's the start of those brackets that we started our last side with. So it's the 1 chain, miss the next stitch, so we're not crocheting into this first stitch, and into the next stitch it's the pineapple cluster. So on my very final pineapple cluster on the final side, so miss next stitch, and in the next stitch do the pineapple cluster. And there we go, yarn over, pull through the first 8, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2. And then we're on the last stitch of the side, so now we make 1 chain, miss the final stitch of the side, but now we do a slip stitch to the top of our beginning 3 chain to join and close the round. And then we fasten off. So I have fastened off, and as you can see at the end of round 11 we should have 13 pineapple clusters on each side, with obviously our 4 trebles in each corner chain space. So there are our 4 trebles in the corner chain space, and now we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 pineapple clusters going across. And so now we can move on to round 12. So at the beginning of round 12 it tells us to join with yarn J into any corner chain space. So join with yarn A into any corner chain space, and then if you look at the pattern it tells us to make 5 chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and this time that 5 chain counts as 1 treble, so 1, 2, 3. The first 3 chain counts as 1 treble, US double crochet, plus the last 2 chain counts as the 2 chain which will create our corner chain space. So when we crochet back around and when we slip stitch into this chain at the end of the round, we're going to be slip stitching into this 3rd chain here of this beginning 5 chain. So you might want to put a stitch marker into that 3rd chain up. So we've made 5 chain, and then it's 1 treble US double crochet into the same corner chain space. And so here we've created our first corner, but our corner is going to be made up of just the 1 treble US double crochet on this round. So looking at the pattern, it now tells us to do 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the first stitch of the side. So the very first stitch, that's where we're going to be doing our first pineapple cluster into. And obviously our pineapple cluster is yarn over hook, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and do that 4 times in total. Insert your yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. We've done it 4 times in total. Should be 9 loops in total on your hook. And now yarn over and pull through the first 8 loops, which is all of them except this end one here. There we go. Then you'll end up with 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through those remaining 2 loops. And now looking at the pattern, it tells us to miss the next stitch, so we're not going to be crocheting into this stitch here. And now we have the instructions all in brackets, just like in round 11 where we make 1 chain, but this time we're just working our pineapple clusters into the chain spaces. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I've made 1 chain and then it's 1 pineapple cluster in the next 1 chain space, and the 1 chain space, they are these spaces that we created in round 11. So simply insert your hook into that chain space. So yarn over hook, insert your hook into the chain space, and then just complete the pineapple cluster as we have done in round 11. So yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the chain space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the chain space, yarn over, pull up a loop. Do that 4 times in total until you have the 9 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 8 loops, you'll have 2 remaining, yarn over and pull through those 2. So that's a pineapple cluster in that chain space. And then looking at the pattern, we just repeat all of that to the final chain space of the side. So 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the next chain 1 space, which is this one here. Done that all the way across to the final chain space of the side, the final 1 chain space of the side there. And then if you look at the pattern, it now tells us to do 1 chain and then miss the next stitch. So we're missing this stitch here, and then 1 pineapple cluster in final stitch of side. So in the very final stitch of the side, we're going to do a pineapple cluster. There we go, yarn over, pull through all the loops on the hook, except that last one, which will leave us with 2, yarn over and pull through those remaining 2. And so now if you look at the pattern, it now tells us to do 1 chain, and then into the corner chain space, we're just doing 1 treble US double crochet, 2 chain, and then a further 1 treble US double crochet. So unlike our other corners, these corners have just got the 1 treble US double crochet in them. And now if you have a look, it says repeat from star 3 times, ending final repeat at star star. So go back to where the star is towards the start of the round, and you'll see it's the beginning of the side again, and we're going to basically repeat everything we've done on this side on each of the next 3 sides. So we start by doing 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the first stitch of the side, so this one here. So I'm just on the final side and I've done the final pineapple cluster into the final one chain space of that last side. And so looking at the pattern, I still need to do one chain, miss next stitch, so miss this stitch here, and then one pineapple cluster in the final stitch of the side. 2, 3 and 4, yarn over, pull through the first 8 loops, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2 loops, and then it says one chain, and then we're at star star. So we now slip stitch to the 3rd chain of the beginning 5 chains. So remember, at the very start of this round we made that 5 chain. Those first 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, counted as our first treble or US double crochet stitch of the side. So now we're going to be slip stitching into that 3rd chain, going under the 2 strands, and then work that slip stitch and then fasten off. So I have fastened off, and that is now what the end of round 12 is looking like. We've got 2 rounds now of these pineapple cluster puff stitches going all the way around, and in round 12 we should have 16 of them, plus in the corners we've got 2 treble in each corner. So in the corner we've got 1, 2 trebles, and then we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 pineapple clusters going all the way across. And now we're ready to move on to round 13. And round 13 is another round of pineapple clusters. And if you look at the pattern, it tells us to join yarn F to any corner chain space. And this time we start like we've started many rounds, with 3 chain and then 1 treble US double crochet, 2 chain, and then a further 2 treble US double crochet into that corner chain space. So we start the round like so, and then looking at the pattern we now miss the next stitch, so we're not going to go into that first stitch, but we make 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the next 1 chain space. So miss this stitch, we're not going to go into that first stitch at the side, but here is the first 1 chain space in which we're going to do our pineapple cluster. So yarn over hook, insert your hook into the space, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. Do that 4 times in total. Yarn over hook, insert your hook into the space, yarn over hook, pull up a loop, that's 2, yarn over hook, insert your hook into the space, yarn over hook and pull up a loop, that's 3, yarn over hook, insert your hook into the space, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. Done that 4 times in total. Yarn over hook, pull through the first 8 loops, which is all of them except this last one, will give us 2 remaining loops, yarn over and pull through those remaining 2 loops. And if you have a look at the pattern, we repeat everything in those brackets to the final 1 chain space of the side. So it's 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the next 1 chain space, and repeat this all the way to the final chain space of the side. So I'm just coming up to the final 1 chain space of the side, which is this one here. There's the corner chain space, and there's the final 1 chain space of the side. Just doing my last pineapple cluster into that final chain space. Remember not to make our clusters, our sort of puff stitches, too tall. And when you look at the pattern now, we've done everything in the brackets to the final 1 chain space of the side, and then it tells us to make 1 chain and then miss the final stitch. So this is the final stitch that we're not going to crochet into, and then in the corner we do our usual 2 treble US double crochet 2 chain, and then 2 further treble US double crochet. And then I'll show you now what this side looks like. We've got our 3 rounds now of the pineapple cluster puff stitches. And so looking at the pattern, we're now ready to go on to the next side. It says repeat from star 3 times, ending final repeat at star star. So go back to where the star is, which is towards the beginning of the round, and it tells us to miss the next stitch, so we're not crocheting into this one, and then straight away we've got our instructions in brackets, 1 chain and then 1 pineapple cluster in the next 1 chain space, which is this one here, and then repeat that all the way across to the end of the side and repeat it on all of the remaining 3 sides. And so I'm just coming up to the final pineapple cluster in the final 1 chain space of the final side. So just do our final one in here. It's 1, 2, 3 and 4, yarn over, pull through the first 8, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2. And now looking at the pattern, it tells us to make 1 chain and then miss the final stitch of the side, which is this one here, and now we're at star star, so obviously we haven't got the corner chain space to go into, and so now we do a slip stitch to the top of the first 3 chain to fasten off. So 1, 2, 3, here's that top of the first 3 chain that we made at the start of the round. Insert your hook into there and then work a slip stitch and then fasten off. And there we have the end of round 13. So we should have 17 pineapple clusters going across each side. So we can count them. So here's our corner, the 4 treble in each corner, and then here's the pineapple clusters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and there's the 4 treble in the next corner chain space. And so now we can move on to round 14. The next rounds can be found on the following tutorials, which are all over on my YouTube channel. Hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching.